Hello everyone, welcome back to Trek-A-Day. Today we have another one of these Star Trek Best Episode Collections, number 15, with a focus on Ambassador K'Ehleyr on the cover here. 3-episode set with TNG's The Emissary. And here we get our introduction to a fascinating character that sadly was only seen a handful of times, Ambassador K'Ehleyr, in which Ambassador K'Ehleyr and the Enterprise are charged with racing to find a Klingon ship with a crew that was in deep hibernation and still believe, once they wake up, that the war is still ongoing and they are at risk of attacking Federation colonies within the area. And there's a Klingon ship on the way as well, but they won't reach them in time, and there's not only the race to solve this issue, but how do you solve it? Klingons of that era, can you negotiate with them? Are they going to believe you? Are you going to have to destroy them if they happen to awaken before you get there? Can you get there in time before they awaken from stasis? Already an interesting premise, with a lot of cultural tensions and Cold War allegories, and tying into a lot of the stories of immediately post-World War II, Japanese soldiers who are left at their posts after the kind of island-hopping campaign in the Pacific, who were found and still thought the war was on. And it was a fascinating premise in itself, and already that would have made a good episode, but part of why the episode stands out is the second layer to it, K'Ehleyr's history with Worf, and the emotional tension that they have and their love affair, and that adds a whole new dynamic to what already was going to be a pretty fascinating looking episode. So really great early TNG episode. Moving on to Deep Space Nine, Soldiers of the Empire. We're deep into the Dominion War, but not long after General Martok has been liberated from the Jem'Hadar camp, he is given charge of the bird of prey, the Rotaran, and sent on a dangerous mission where he takes Worf along as his second-in-command, and then Jadzia decides to tag along as the science officer. And it doesn't take long after going aboard the Rotaran for them to realize that the crew, after loss after loss after loss in face of the Dominion, have completely lost any sense of confidence. They are a defeated group of Klingons who see no way out of dishonor towards victory. And the problem is exacerbated by Martok's own personal situation, him having not quite yet dealt with the emotional trauma of his internment and his experience with the Jem'Hadar. It works on two fronts, a great moment of growth for the relationship between Worf and Martok and the entry into his house, and a great look into an aspect of Klingon culture that is frequently glossed over. They're almost always depicted as the brave and powerful warriors, and we don't get to see a whole lot of Klingons dealing with emotional trauma. They are a species that is largely driven by a desire for conflict as a way of attaining honor and glory, and we don't necessarily see a lot of the other side of that coin. So it's a really good episode of Deep Space Nine. And then moving on to Voyager's Faces, which has always been a little bit of a mixed bag for me. We have B'Elanna is kidnapped by Vidian scientists, and her DNA is separated, her human and Klingon halves, and there's now a fully Klingon and a fully human B'Elanna. And the good thing about it is that it's an interesting way of looking at that internal conflict, especially early on in Voyager, and really digging into that element of the character. But the very literal splitting of the two halves, and both halves being a bit too stereotypical, means it really is just too surface and in your face a little bit. It feels like that literal separation on screen was a step too far in dealing with trying to explore that element of the character, so it didn't quite work, but at least we got that, and that was something that had not been any more than just kind of hinted at the time in Voyager with B'Elanna's character. So at least that helps to establish something a little more that is very important to the character as the show goes on. And we do get little bits of the beginnings of her starting to confide in Tom Paris, and a little like the seeds of that relationship are starting that episode. So overall, it's an episode that I've always felt kind of missed the mark, but does have some interesting elements to it to explore.